Hello, listeners. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Anders Indset, who is known as the Business Philosopher. He is a Norwegian-born writer, deep tech investor, and former elite athlete. He is a 5-time Spiegel best-selling author with 6 international books to his name and has been recognized by Thinkers 50 as one of the most influential thinkers in technology and leadership for the years to come. One of his most recent books has been translated into over 10 languages. It's called The Viking Code, The Art and Science of Norwegian Success. And his forthcoming book, The Singularity Paradox, Bridging the Gap Between Humanity and AI, is scheduled to release Q1 2025, depending on when you're hearing this. Now, Indset is a trusted sparring partner and advisor to international CEOs, political leaders, and a guest lecturer at leading international business schools. We had an incredible conversation. I can't do it justice by giving you any bit of it or summary, so you're just going to have to dive in and enjoy. Welcome to the Live for Yourself Revolution, where our mission is to highlight stories of entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs who are truly living for themselves. I'm your host, Dr. Benjamin Ritter, leadership and career coach focused on guiding you toward a career and life you can love. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you enjoy the show. I was at a gathering recently, and everyone sat down around each other, and someone said, "So, tell me about yourself." And that is such a interesting, such a loaded question. And looking at your varied background and your interests, I'd love to just hear from you. What are you passionate about?
Mm. That's a very good question because I always, when I start to talk about myself, I feel like I leave my path of learning. So it's not about the content, and it becomes like that, that agency of manifesting what you are, and it leaves kind of sort of the dynamism of life. And to me, I can say I'm a passionate learner. I am curious. I'm interested in everything. And when I get into a new venture or something, I want to dig in deep. I want to get the essence, and I want to understand. So to me, it's never been about, trying to be very like a person of knowledge, because I always felt like knowledge would be a part of computation, and we see that today, right? There would almost infinite access to free knowledge, and it's an optimization game. And I was always about that. It's more like the essence of the Hegel's way of thinking, and Kant, and you have that substance of the thinking in itself. So it's always difficult for me to talk about myself because I feel like I'm the observer, and I'm passionate about learning and growing. It's just that experience of progress. And my latest book is about success. And I was a former professional athlete, and I was a hardcore capitalist, and I built my companies, but I never felt success. And today I feel that I'm truly successful to me. And that is because I can get to experience learning and experience progress. So I think that is like the best answer I can come up with, is to say that, I'm passionate about trying to understand the world around us, or you understand how I perceive the world. And then there are things that I also enjoy, like to sit down at the piano and play, or just have a book and just let my mind wander. But I think, the passion that I follow is to experience progress.
Hmm. And that can be in anything, I guess. So how have the things that you've wanted to experience progress in changed over time? And
Yeah.
I'm thinking about my own background. It's like when I was a kid, I wanted to be a professional soccer player. So we have some sports kind of similarities behind, within our lives. But I also was an artist, a poet, a musician, like a singer and violinist. I then evolved because soccer became everything I became passionate about. Then it went into nutrition, and then psychology and personal development. It's interesting to see that path. What has yours been?
Yeah, I think it's similar. I've been also drifting into many things, probably because, I mean, you're probably pretty talented at many things. So the mastery of a particular skill or a particular finite game, that is obvious, like pushing for like perfection and having those finite goals and giving up everything else at the particular stage. And I was also like that. I could pick up a lot of things and I could do it fairly well right off the bat. And I was, you could call it talented in many things. And if you experience that, and as a part of your curiosity, you always have like kind of sort of a fulfilling. You also have an ego, and you have an extrinsic validation of things that you do, right? So I think that is a drift. And then you see that you can all think about that these type are like part of a journey, but you can also think about it as serendipity or just randomness that there is in life, and things just evolve in some different path that you were beyond because you're open to new experiences. So if you're locked in on one path, you could have a very sole focus on that, and then that's not bad. I mean, you can have clear goals, but to me, I think also it was about that, and it was also I wouldn't say a pivotal point in terms of a radical pivotal point, but the discovery of not feeling intrinsically motivated success to me, but having a big part offloaded onto an external validation, that to me was exhausting. So letting go of things, as in comparison to choosing things, not choosing the path, finding yourself, finding the purpose, but saying, this one thing is what I do not want to do. And continuing that path of letting go and leaving things behind in order to put yourself in a position to be struck by something called happiness or something that would drive you in a new direction, to just be aware of new things. That to me became a model that seemed much more plausible to say, I have no idea where this wonderful journey to nowhere will take me, but I just have to figure out what do I leave behind and what do I not do. And that became a very healthy model of living. So yeah, I think that's been a change that I've experienced over the years, and I'm living by that today, very much so.
What were some of the things that you had to say, put these in the not do column?
Yeah, I mean, I quit my sport because I didn't experience it. I sold my company because I didn't feel like, having that, set model. I ended a relationship because I know it didn't feel like the path that I was going on. I left ventures behind, and I let go, and I had no idea. I didn't have didn't sell off a company that I could just sit back and enjoy the ride. So I was, left with what do I do now? And my now wife said to me, well, you're passionate about philosophical contemplation and you love philosophy, and you obviously know a lot about the business world. So you're a business philosopher. And that, okay, that sounds plausible. Let's figure out what that is, right? So these type of things has been very much a driver of my journey, to just tap into the unknown and lean into the new and to learn. So leaving these things behind has obviously been things that I've been conscious about not doing.
I want to talk about this new version of success, but I myself had a pivotal point where I just said, the things I'm doing right now are not the things that I want to keep doing, and was able to make the decision to shut them down and to move into something else. But can you go back to right before you sold the company, right before you kind of redefined what success meant to you? What pushed it over the edge to like redefine redefine what that verb or meaning was, because before you were operating with a different system potentially.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. When I did that, I had a discussion on that company, and it was like, if you're tied into investments and real estate and what have you not, it's like a marriage. You don't just quit. It can be difficulties. You have employees, they have a job. Do you get external investors? All of these things become very valid. And then you say, okay, well, you will not get the money that you want because the partner cannot pay that money. So you would say, okay, what is most important to you? That the people in the organization has a good job, that you can continue to do what they like, and then you let go. But that did not define what I, or redefine what I understood by success. It wasn't really until that I wrote now the Viking Code, the art of science of Norwegian success, which is basically 15 years later, and a book that came to be that was not planned at all, but happened in between as I was writing a book about capitalism, and I was digging deep into my forthcoming book, The Singularity Paradox, that I went down this path. And by looking at my fellow Norwegians, in particular, young men that are really successful in sports today, that has nothing to do with snow and ice, from a small country that does not value high performance. And how did they become so successful, measured in the finitude of the game of tennis and golf and soccer and what have you not, beach volleyball, triathlon. And that was to me a realization that the magic of success, of course, you like the gold medals, the Olympics, and Nobel Prize, the whole shabam, but the essence of success is actually the small steps that you take on the journey. Everything in life is compound interest. So if you have a high focus on input, you are micro ambitious and you do the small thing on a daily basis, and you experience that compounds into measurable, finite goals that many people or media or through fortune and fame as seen as successful. So this was basically something that I always felt. So it wasn't really important to me to be successful in that validation scheme, but through that exploration of this performance culture, it became clear to me that this is actually what it's all about. It's about that journey, the path. And so the definition of success to me became clearer with this book, although this journey has been ongoing for 15 years.
It was so interesting as reading the Viking Code of how our culture might create might impact, right, how we approach business, sports, relationships, and how we can evolve ourselves within those cultures and communities to create our identity and ultimately our own definition of success. Um, don't give away the whole book, but I would love to hear some of the things that you learned about um, performance, or whatever you would like to share around success to our audience.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to give away all the books because I mean, all the book, having a haptic
Don't give
experience.
away the whole book, some
No,
of the
but
book.
having a haptic experience of reading a physical book is good for you because you're detached from being sucked into all the traction of the current media of optimization and the rapidness of things that we live in today. So, but yeah, I think one of the core takeaways is, and this is something that is not self-evident to the US culture, obviously. They have a declaration of independence, they believe in the individual, and the individualism is at the strive of high performance. And in Norway, it's historically so. We had to come together and be united. We lived in villages, and even the Vikings, they had all had their roles, and everyone had to participate. And I grew up in a small city or town in Norway where I had to do biathlon and cross country skiing and soccer because otherwise, my classmates wouldn't come to do my sport. So it was a mutual understanding that you show up for the others in order to, play your game or to strive. And today, if you look at sports, everything has become data driven. You have access to the same, technologies and training cultures. There is no USP or no way to stand out with that. So the culture, the essence of the team becomes the driving force of giving birth to high performance. And you see that with these athletes. So the wonders of this discovery was not the magic sauce behind the high performance culture, but the discovery was that they're not only the best at their game, they're also the most liked. So the book is about, how to build a high performance culture rooted in values, where you put your effort into the team in order to uplift the team so that you can strive even more. It's like a reinforcement learning model. So if everyone around you are playing at a higher level, it's easier for you to develop. And that is the model that you put, at the core, is that you build a team, the culture, and in business that has not been a model of the past, hierarchical with management and command and control. But today, when everyone has almost infinite access to free knowledge, the only power then becomes the culture, the team, tapping into the unknown. And that is, surrounding yourself with people that are better than you, that you can listen to, that you can learn, and everything becomes about progress and change and development. And how do you build that? You build it out two basic forces. One is trust, and the other one is friction. So only if you have trust in other people, by trusting yourself, you lean into that. Only then can you have friction, where you have different opinions, where you can do that dance to have progress. So this is basically, the book it starts off with a personal journey of mine that was very quick to write, and it goes into the world of sports. But the second part of the book is very philosophical. It's about the dynamism of life and how to live a fulfilling life, and how to have an active life as a comparison to a reactive life. Mm-hmm. We live in a world today where we are maximizing the art of being right. It's a binary way of seeing the world. Your opinion, my opinion, zeros and ones. The US is very much divided. And that comes out of that optimization game. And I think that, it's not about creating a knowledge society where we know something, but to seek understanding and seek progress. And this is what the second part of the book is, to give the agency to a human being back, so that you can at least shape your own future, your own reality. So it's an easy read, but it has a deep philosophical foundation. And that is, I think, very valuable in business and politics and education, and way beyond sports. But I think we can learn a lot from that dynamism of sports.
Mm-hmm. I am who I am today as a leader because of my experience in sports. And without it, I don't think I'd be anywhere near as successful as I am. And I've taken a lot of lessons from that. Something that you said around trust and friction really resonated, because I see a lot of companies and a lot of leaders, especially in moments of turmoil and difficult economic moments, kind of throw out trust, and they're just like, we're just going to live in friction right now. We're just going to, and they miss out on spending the time to ensure that trust is there. What have you seen in regards to like your organizational work or with leaders as methods that can rebuild trust?
Yeah. Yeah, I think first, I mean, we don't even live in friction then. We live in absolutism. So to managers tied to their self-evident truth. And there are times where you have to make a decision, right? It's not that I'm neglecting that. But the whole path of progress. So you can distinguish between management and leadership. So in today's world, we have no idea what kind of jobs there will be in 10 years, what kind of skills you would need. So it's kind of sort of like an era of generalists, but you need a high level of the adaptability to change pace, to move on, and to adapt to new circumstances. But in that field, there is something that is really important. We talk about agile organization and high level of adaptability. That requires a high level of stability. So processes and digital tools and technologies and management become crucial. It's not like you could play around with friction and creation where you have certain circumstances in business or in life in general. So it's not a culture of failure that you're looking for with an open heart surgery or a plane landing on an airport. That has to function. So you need the functionality. There are finite games of winning or losing or definition of structures. That's a stability part. And it's the same in sport. In the final of the Olympics, you don't play around and screw around. You can have fun, you can enjoy, you can try stuff, but mostly it's within that system that you have practice to the utmost. And then you have that practice field where you dance around and you're free, and where you can build that, a new development where you go beyond what you know today. Funny to look at how that was prior to the pandemic. We had people coming into the office, so there was a base trust in the organization, and people bumped into each other at a place that was back then $1 trillion industry called the coffee machine, right? Because people just came on and this was not a set structure. And that was very healthy, I think, for coming up with new ideas, solving difficult situation if there was something that happened the day before or something like that, to talk it out and to build trust and to have that, communication that was not set into a Zoom session where everyone becomes zombies of reactionism, where you have to deliver on ABC and you have little time and all of that. So I think, can you take that back? I think yes, but you should be cautious about when am I on the practice field and when am I doing the game? When am I in the game playing the Champions League final? And that is the role of the leader. So I'm not saying that needs to be made, hard decisions to be made, but that's not about friction. That's just about like say, now we have to perform. This is the level, this is the finals. Now I have to stand up. I have to rise above, or we have to have leaders so people stand up and just, take a decision here. This is about, survival, winning or losing, or crucial decisions. So that's one path, but you have to you have to know when that is, as a comparison when you are on that playing field where you can play around with, things. And that becomes very clear in traditional organization that miss out the next wave of technology. You get the Kodak moment or whatever you want to call it, the Nokia moment, where you become management and you optimize the old as in comparison to be leaders and look for the new. So I think that is something that organizations can learn a lot from sport, where you have the practice field where it hurts to lose in training, and it's you get mocked by your colleagues or whatever, and it can be painful, but that is where you process and progress, and you need that space also in the organization.
How do people feel like they're on the team? Or how do they know when it's practice? Or how do they know when it's the game? Uh,
That's a very
those are very specific moments.
yeah, I think that's a very relevant and very good question. Um, I would say that is what makes for leaders. So leaders, they lean into the vulnerability. Um, I remember many years ago. I think was it it must have been probably I would say 12, 13 years ago. It was the last trip from Stephen R. Covey to Europe. He was at a conference and he shook my hand and held my hand for what felt like a half hour. And his 7 habits of highly effective people has one habit, and it's seek first to understand, then to be understood. So we have a lot of managers today that try to explain the world and teach people what to think and what to do, right? And what he meant by that is something that I also relate to, is that if you are interested in other people, you become interesting. And we like interesting people, right? So that is where you start that foundation of trust. If you are honest about what you know and what you feel and what you think, people might see that as a weakness. What I have experienced is that self-secure managers of dominance are actually insecure. You have a lot of overplayed insecurity with the facade. So tapping into that vulnerability, and I think Brené Brown has written a lot on this topic, and just saying that if you're caught off guard on a topic, with colleagues in front of the team, just don't overplay it. Just say, you caught me off guard. I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm going to go home and read about it. Let's meet tomorrow on eye level. And that, builds a lot of trust. And this is the playing field. You're in that moment. You feel that it's awkward. It's not about, survival of the organization. It's about that progress moment. So you can overplay it and do it as a game. I'm the winner. I'm the strong manager. I know everything. Or you can lean into that practice field where I'm a leader and I am vulnerable and I can do that. And that emerges into, a relationship. And I think vulnerability is the birthplace of progress and creation and innovation. So I think the answer to your question would be leaders get that. And it's not easy to pinpoint when you're in the game of finitude and when you're on the playing field. But I think leaders are good at that, to leaning in and then to step up and make that crucial decision when it's needed. And I always keep referring to Pixar and Ed Catmull working with Steve Jobs as like a symbolism of one of those leadership manuals on how to have a performance culture that is at the same time playful, that is at the same time respectful in terms of progress, and has that incremental change. But at the end, you have to deliver a great, successful, capitalistic movie as an outcome of that process. That is the success. So that is, it's not easy to see it, but I think that's distinguishes good leaders from managers.
What do you think is preventing companies from taking managers and turning them into good leaders? Or what do you think? I mean, less than what is keeping them, but what is the solution other than hiring the business philosopher?
No, I think one of the I would say that one of the skills that are lacking the most in today's business world, and I'm struggling to get my head around why that is. It's to anticipate plausible future scenarios. So all too often you have all these experts talking about studies of the past. And to me, I am invited to all these conferences to speak, and many people say you have radical visions about the future, and this is really interesting, but these are radical thoughts. And I say, no, they're really boring because all I'm doing is that I'm just projecting an 80-year journey of exponential progress of technology into the future. So I always question the same people and say, do you really think we will in 5 years from now be playing the game of Snake on a Nokia 5110 cell phone? Or do you think, it will get better? Do you think it will progress? Do you think batteries will be stronger or weaker in 5 years from now? Do you think storage and distribution of energy will be better or worse 10 years, 5 years from now? And everyone comes to the conclusion that we are in a rapid pace of change. But I struggle to get my mind around why you cannot anticipate such scenarios. So when you say that the efficiency of the sun today is that with a solar panel is about 18%, 20%, and you look at new material, you look at material science that are projects such as at Oxford PV that are making breakthroughs now with new materials, and you read about all this quantum computing and AI and everything that is going to solve and progress in these particular areas. I question, why don't you believe in it? If you talk about it, why don't you really believe in it? Why don't you believe that a solar panel will move from, let's say, 20 to 40%? I'm not looking at 100% or whatever. I'm looking at I'm looking at some kind of progress. And if you see that, which most people would say, yeah, I agree. Say, what does that mean? What does it mean that a Walmart that has a lot of space all of a sudden has an overproduction of sun and green energy and solar energy? What do they do with that energy? They could sell it back to a large state or national wide net, a grid, put it back into that, or they can make a local distribution and say, let's give all our customers free charging. So they come and have a supercharger and they load their car for free. And the batteries today can serve a household with about 3 days of energy, one car. So if you say that in 5 to 10 years from now, the battery can do 6 days. Basically, what you do, you go shopping for groceries once a week, you load your car for free, you drive back home, you tap your house into the car, and the car serves as a battery for the house, and you literally have free energy. And that in a time where we talk about high energy costs, right? So we're not talking about hundreds of years here. We're talking about a short period of time where a very plausible scenario could be that the marginal cost of energy will drop towards zero. So the next kilowatt hour of energy is today also almost zero. So it's all about the investment cost and what have you not. So energy at a very low cost turns sustainability into a game of efficiency, which is a very plausible way of thinking about development if you look at exponential graphs that have been going on for 80 years. So the question is much more provocative, or I would say radical, if you challenge someone to say it will halt, we will not have progress, or it will go backwards. So I think this is the most the lost skill, the art of being wrong, or the lost skill of thinking, or basically just to have a plausible scenario. What do you really think will happen if ABC? If you look at a continent such as Africa today, Africa has about 1.5 billion people, and they are still getting between 6 and 8 children, and the children are surviving. So the population will grow towards 4 billion within the next 30, 40 years, 50 years. So unless something happens, which is of radical measurements of some kind of radical distinction or whatever, but it doesn't seem like that. So it's much more plausible it will be 4 billion people. What do you think will happen? Will you have a lot of people, old people sitting at the shores of France, drinking Chardonnay and eating canapé and seeing how hundreds of millions of people will be drowning trying to swim over to Europe? Or will there be some base structure in Africa that most of them will survive? You will have a middle class. And what does that mean? You'll probably have 400, 500 million new people coming into the airline industry. It's obvious. On the one hand, you have old people in Europe and the US, a pyramid that people are not getting children anymore. They are rich, they have money, they will spend money traveling, and then you have a new continent coming up. So the airline industry will grow by 500, 600 million passenger in the next 30, 40 years. So these type of scenarios is something that you could think about, but not a lot of leaders do. And I could go on for hours about the topic, but this is what I'm trying to grasp, how, to me, very plausible developments are not seen at all.
Well, leaders have to take the time to see them. And I think, because the capability, I mean, I would think that is there, but the time to reflect, or the need, or the understanding the need to have these types of brainstorms, I'm not sure is as promoted by organizations or by leaders.
Yeah, I would agree to that. But on the same time, I would say never in human history have we had more time. So basically, all these self-help gurus tell us to slow down. The problem is we have too much
Yeah.
shit going on, right? We have hundreds of things that are, talking about where we started off, what to let go of. Yeah. We never, I mean, most people have never worked as few hours as we have today. We have spare time, free time. We have all these activities. We have all this shit going on. So the challenge is more like, it's not that we should slow down. It is just basically coming back to where we started, to let go of some things, to take some things out. Me myself, I think owning a lot of things to me is really exhausting, because it's always something going on. If you have 5 houses and 7 cars and you have all that, it's constantly something that happens is going on. Do I need that if I want to learn, if I want to think, if I want to spend time reflecting and seeing those wonders of the ordinary? No. So the life of efficiency is important to me. And I think we will see more of that, that people will value efficiency as a customer experience. And companies will understand that if you're not efficiently managing your resources, you will not make money. So what we have as an ideology today to save the planet and climate and what have you, not on ecology, becomes ingrained into the core of capitalism, which is if you're not efficiently running your organization in terms of resources and everything, you will not make money. And I think that is something that we are all seeking for, like to get time and agency back in our life, because we are so busy, so many meetings, so many things to do. But you can influence that. If you think it's valuable to think about the future and reflect about plausible scenarios, it's it's easy, because but it's disciplined. It's the same as going to the gym. Now everyone is all up for longevity and putting in their training, and they put in the schedules. Yeah, so they put in a thinking hour, blocking your calendar 1, 2, 3, 4 thinking hours
Yeah.
every week. I said, what should I do then, Anders? I said, nothing. Just take a white piece of paper and stare at it until the blood comes dripping out of your eyes. You cannot shut off this machine, right? So something will happen. You just have that time in your calendar. No one's going to bug you. Put your phone on, on airplane mode or what have you. Shut off your computer and just be there. You don't have to practice meditation, because then again, it's a task that you have spent time that you have to do. You have to go to meditate. You have to do the yoga. You have to do the meditation practice, whatever. But just set off thinking time. And in that time, your purpose is to do nothing. And then if you do that, you can take a booklet and write some thoughts and reflections. And the crazy thing is that if you do that over time, all of a sudden you will come back to something you thought about 6 months ago, that you will see relations to things that are happening, where you see patterns and things, because you're just there and reflect on some things. So I think that is something that needs some discipline, but it's a very simple life hack on how to start to think about plausible future scenarios. Because I agree with you. I think the capabilities are there. We are just too busy with a lot of things that are not needed in our lives.
I love how this came all the way full circle to what are you saying no to, and making time for deeper understanding, the ability to anticipate, those future scenarios. And we didn't talk about it, but the other aspect of potentially being a successful or sought after leader, the development of interpersonal skills. And I really do hope that our readers our listeners check out the Viking Code and all of your other material and works and all the ones that are to come. Where can our listeners find out more about the Business Philosopher?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me, Ben. Sure, you can look up andersindset.com. That's my website. We are adding material there. There are quite a few articles. I have a section where I write with my quantum physicist friend Florian Neukert. We call it sci-fi with PH, so it's science philosophy. And I have a lot of articles there, and there'll be more videos and material and links to books coming out. The new book that is coming out in September, in March, sorry, in Q1 of Q1 2025 is titled Singularity Paradox. You can sign up there on singularityparadox.com. And occasionally I'm on social media. LinkedIn, obviously, is a place, and sometimes on Instagram. So feel free to link up and write reflections and thoughts. Always happy to read about that.
Yeah, I'll put all those links in the show notes for everyone. So apologies for keeping you a little bit late. I was looking at the time and wanted to respect it. So
Good.
I do appreciate our conversation today. You mentioned, like, I asked kind of like, how would you know what you're passionate about? And one of the first things you said was, to me, before I think even recording, was writer. Would you label yourself as a writer and as a learner? Is that kind of your main top of funnel definition of self, or is there something else?
Yeah, I have a difficulty with the self, because I don't know what it is, right? So I'm trying to be more, and not to label it. What I find is that
Mm,
writing is thinking. When I write, I sort my thoughts, and that is very fulfilling because I learn about the things that I want to figure out. It's a time where I put in effort, I put in the time to think about the topics at a deeper level than I do when I just talk about them. So to me, writing is thinking. Um, as for philosophy, I think philosophy is a thinking practice. So what I also like is that I like to put my ideas into practice. I like to invest in companies. I like to get involved and try out things and think about structures. And so I've, again, now after many years, I increased my time spent on ventures and investments. I invest on something that I picked up from a colleague in Norway. I invest on the basis of ROL, which is return on learning as a comparison on ROI. And I like that. And that to me is I like to invest in companies where I sense that the founders have a good skill of execution and learning, but where I also can learn something and I can contribute with my network and things, but also have like that interest to be engaged in the corporation or in the venture. So yeah, I think taking out that self part or the subject, I am very interested in learning new things, and writing is something that helps me sort out my thoughts.
So in exploring the topic of self, consciousness, etc., I imagine does the question of meaning come up,
Yeah, I mean,
or is that
obviously.
separate?
No, I mean, obviously that is
Yeah.
that is part, and I can relate to that need to have stability in life. Be it like a religious path, although I think belief is good. I am not so convinced that religions is good because they're categories of a belief system. But I have huge respect for everyone that has a belief and needs that. But to me, it feels like with all these things that we have some kind of agency to do things. It's not necessarily what you could say as a free will or whatever, because free is free and will want something. So it doesn't seem like there is like this very easy answer to that. But what I think is that to me, it's much more about the activation. So you give meaning to life, you put a meaning into life. So you do a lot of things that you are in agency of doing. So instead of reacting and reflecting and trying to be something or someone based on the definition of a finite goal, I think to me, it seems much more relatable and plausible when you give meaning to life, where you have the sense of agency. And I don't know if that makes sense, but that is something that is
Hmm.
in a part of the dynamism. And I think it's very much, what you also understand of Eastern philosophy, where the path is the journey, right? So it's about that path and being
Yeah.
conscious on the path, but still being open to multiple paths that might, evolve. And that is to be on that journey to give meaning to life. Because if you give meaning to life, you have a sense as you have the sensations of disappointments or fulfillments, love, and also sometimes the sadness and the struggles. And that is basically the part of, there's a wonderful German word for this. It's called Lebendigkeit. And it bakes in a lot of various words around vitality and activation. The very notion of being alive, of being something different than a computer, than a humanoid. The word mensch to me is very important to that extent, right? It's something that a mensch is from the Yiddish. It's like in German language, the Mensch is the opposite to what they would say as an Unmensch. So an Unmensch is a destructive, negative person. There was it would say that relate to that, say that this is an Unmensch. But to the word Mensch, it's not clear what it is. So I would argue that if there's an Unmensch, the Mensch must be the opposite. It's a positive driven entity towards a possibilistic, positive future, an active entity. Human being in English is neutral. It's like, it's just a neutral definition of an entity. And that's therefore I like the word mensch. to fill the word Mensch with Lebendigkeit as something that
Mm.
hopefully for a long time distinguishes us from robots and technology. Although that said, my colleague and I, Florian Neukert, we argue that when we are going to create these super, AGIs, it might make sense to try to build some kind of artificial human intelligence, some consciousness into these humanoids, because at the core, I think um, we're not perfect by all means, but we're in a pretty decent way. We have like a general goodness to being a mensch. When a toddler is born, he's not out to kill. He's not out to destroy and destruct. He want to learn and strive. So
Yeah.
I think that journey, of just giving meaning to life, that to me seems much more relatable than the finitude of one answer to what's the meaning of all of this. I think, as I said in the beginning, it can be a wonderful journey,
Yeah.
and most likely to nowhere.
Yeah. Well, challenge that having a different mindset. So not thinking that you can create or meaning within your life, or to that you can be action oriented to give meaning to life. If instead we perceive it, like I think one of the biggest issues is that we have to take or find meaning when we face disappointment in that. I think we move away from that mensch mentality and we get frustrated at life for not supposedly supplying something that we thought we deserved. And it's, I think, one of the biggest issues when it comes to, I mean, your like job satisfaction, or even just life satisfaction overall. So I appreciate you bringing this up.
Yeah, let me because this is something
Yeah.
that if you look at the mythos of Sisyphus from Albert Camus, like he ends the book with the famous line of "You must imagine Sisyphus a happy man," and he rolls famously rolls the rock up the hill, and it rolls down on the other hand, and does that every single day, and he finds some kind of purpose in that evolution of this rock. And I would argue that today's society, particularly in a Western society, we are kind of sort of kicking the rock up hills, but we have a computer or a screen or an Instagram or something in our hand. So the existentialism of the 20th century, that is the angst or anxiety of death, fighting death as the finitude of life, is moved away to a new kind of existentialism that I call the state of being undead. And I'm writing on a piece that I've titled "How to Avoid the Zombie Apocalypse." And that is, the
Mm.
Homo obsoletus, where we are driven by dopamine and serotonin and a dose of impulses from technology, all the way up to a that we started off talking about also a convergence with technology where we wire up our mind and our whatever soul or mind to a computer, and along the way we end up building a perfect AI humanoid, but without perception. So this to me seems like much more of an existential threat, which is a funny one because we will still be around, but there will just be no light. So it's just a perception. So Narcissus, as he looks into the water, and there's a mirror of his whole being, but there is no one home to perceive that a mirror of the mensch. So that is like the existential threat, I would say, of the 21st century. And that has a lot to do with what we talked about, the Mensch and the Lebendigkeit and to be.
Okay. I have taken a lot of your time and I appreciate it, especially this last portion because, meaning and purpose. And it's the problem with, I think, even knowing that it can be created is that that takes effort and sometimes you can just be tired.
Yes,
And
that
people
struggle,
that realize that that's within, yeah.
No, I just think, at least theoretically, there has to be the suffering part, the in order to have love, to experience compassion or liveliness, there has to be the antidote or something. It's just that you cannot, if you can just sit in awe and everything would be perfect, what would that be, right? If you can always ask, do you want peace? And everyone would say like, yeah, of course, like that sounds reasonable, but do you want absolute peace? Well, what does that mean, right? In a literally sense, if we have absolute peace, there is no friction, right? And how would we live then? So at least theoretically, it seems like there has to be like a counterpart, to have the experience of the other, right? You could obviously argue that you could use computationally, and you could just fill your brain with those positive experiences on a good level all the time. But it seems like a state where you would be constantly in another part of perceiving, which over time to me, would at least change the experience of the perceived physical reality, and would be another dimension of consciousness that, yeah, I think the life that we have, how I perceive it, is pretty cool. It's by all due respect not perfect. There is suffering, there are challenges, but the beauty of experience the positive things, it's so wonderful and it's so magical, that I would not want to have another life or a different dimension, because I like this one pretty cool. And how can I argue that anything else would be better, right?
Good, very, very good words to
And
end on. Yeah, that is lots of brightness with that last statement. You've been part of the Live for Yourself revolution. If you've enjoyed today's episode, make sure to share with a friend and spread the good word. Until next time, keep on living for yourself.